Hey there! This episode of the Flabbergasted podcast contains adult themes and language. Listener discretion is advised.
This is the Flabbergasted podcast, where we just can't believe you haven't seen it. Every episode, we discuss a movie that one of us has seen and the other hasn't. Follow us on Instagram @FlabberPod and subscribe in your podcast app of choice. I'm your host, Jessica. Let's get to it. Today, we are talking about When Harry Met Sally from 1989. It's about an hour and a half, written by Nora Ephron, directed by Rob Reiner.
Produced by Nora Ephron, too, I think.
I think it was produced by her as well. Barry Sonnenfeld, director of photography. He directed Men in Black.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
This was a movie you've never seen.
Correct.
But you've heard references of it.
I knew that at some point Billy Crystal was going to wear a cable knit sweater, and I knew about the diner scene. I mean, in broad strokes.
Yes. So Harry and Sally have known each other for years and are very good friends, but they fear sex would ruin the friendship. I don't know that I feel like that's a very good synopsis of the movie, but okay, let's go with it.
I think that it's going for that broadly. I don't mind it.
Okay, so we're kicking right into the movie.
Yeah, it starts out with a little vignette of old people.
Which I love.
Talking about how they met. I thought those were really sweet.
I agree, except I was also like, 2 weeks later they were married. That's what he says.
Yeah.
I met her.
There's a lot of those.
I said I'm going to marry her.
And,
2 weeks.
The past was a different time.
For sure. Yeah.
Pre-social media. It took me about 5 seconds to confirm that was not supposed to be Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan in the future. That we weren't getting like this is how it's going to end, and then you build up to that.
Okay.
But once I confirmed that, I understood, and I was in.
But at first thought, you were like, maybe that's what this is, and then you're like, oh yeah, not.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I did look up how old, and I'm going to have to look it up again because I said it out loud, but I forgot to write it down, how old Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan were at the filming of this movie. Shout out to Call Sheet, where it puts that in the app. Meg Ryan was 27 years old and Billy Crystal was 41 years old, because I kept thinking,
ooh.
Yeah, at the beginning of the movie, he's looking a little older and his hairline
he's
is
supposed to be
quite
young.
receded. Yeah. But I thought that was interesting.
But she does a really good job of not coming across as like young and flighty or anything. Like she, I think, plays it
Age appropriately.
He has to play younger and she has to play older. I think they both do a good job of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, over the course of the movie because they age. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I like it.
This is also one of maybe the only films I've ever seen with Carrie Fisher not as Princess Leia.
Yeah, did you see her name pop up in the credits and you're like, oh, Carrie Fisher. So when you saw her in the movie, you were like, oh, Carrie Fisher.
Oh, Princess Leia. Yeah. It was like a, not scary, obviously, but like a jump scare. Like, whoa, what's Princess Leia doing here?
Yeah, that's fun. I forget that she does other movies or did other movies and how I like her.
Yeah.
When she's not in Star Wars. Like, she's great in Star Wars, blah, 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 of course. But I forget that I like her in other stuff, too.
Mm-hmm. Well, she didn't do that much, right?
Yeah.
She did a lot more script editing and writing and things, from my understanding, because of some of the experiences that she had as a young woman in Hollywood.
Maybe I should rephrase and say, like, the other documentary type videos that you see of her type stuff. Not necessarily movies that she's in.
Well, I mean, clearly she's in some movies.
Okay. They meet each other. They're making out. Meg Ryan interrupts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's happening here exactly? Like, the friend's boyfriend is going to travel to New York with the other friend. They just...
Yeah, she's going to New York and he already lives there. And so because they had a friend of a friend in common, I think this is just... I took it as like, this is the 70s. There was ride boards, like whole bulletin boards just for like, hey, I'm going to Cleveland. Anyone else need to go to Cleveland? This is back when you picked up hitchhikers.
I would never do that now. Like, first of all, they didn't even like pre-meet each other. They just met
Correct.
up and they're like, let's go. And I'm like, you're my friend, but do I like you well enough to spend a weekend with you at a hotel? Like,
I don't think they get a hotel.
no, but 18 hours. Like, when the four of us went to Grand Rapids, I was
Yeah.
like, I hope our friendship can survive spending the weekend
Jeremy's
together.
snoring.
Yeah, well, yeah. But I mean, I think about that. I'm like, I guess they weren't really friends, so it didn't matter. They didn't have to survive each other.
Yeah, that was a time period when it was more common to like ride the bus cross country. And so it's just like a couple, that's all strangers on the bus.
I could totally do a
So it's
bus
not
ride.
as big of a deal.
I feel like because there's multiple strangers.
That's the takeaway is you need more
I
strangers
need
on your
more
car
strangers,
rides,
so the pressure
not
isn't
fewer.
on me to like have a conversation.
I guess they probably could have slept, while they were in the passenger seat.
They talked so much.
Hmm. People were better at talking and just carrying on conversation back then because you didn't have your phone to look down at. You had to be. I noticed early on when they're talking about the ending of Casablanca, right? And so there were more, this was long enough ago that there are more universal cultural touchstones. Not that there are more of them, but the touchstones themselves were more universal, if that makes sense. Like you could get in a car with someone your age and you just knew that both of you had seen Casablanca, a movie that had come out 30 years prior, because of course they've seen Casablanca. Everyone's seen Casablanca. And now what's that movie? If you get in the car and you're like, so let's talk about Avengers Endgame. What's the touchstone that you can like be sure that you'll have that in common and be able to have discourse about it?
There's so many now. Like, there's so many different
Right.
things that it could be for either person that it's not just a takeaway to jump into one.
Yeah. The universality is less discreet. Sorry, I'm distracted by a ad on IMDb right now for a Hugh Jackman movie where he appears to be from the past and living in the future on accident. He's like from colonial times.
Oh, Kate and
And
Leopold.
He's confused about, yes, Kate and Leopold. Okay.
Also a good movie.
I'm sure
with
you think
Meg
so.
Ryan.
Not surprising in the slightest. So we get these. I knew early on that we were going to be jumping time and it was going to give us time stamps as we kept moving forward. At first it was 5 years and then it started stamping closer and closer, which I appreciated. Rachel even pointed out while we were watching it, she's like, I like a concrete timestamp. I like to know this is exactly when and preferably where this scene is taking place.
Yeah, if they're going to
Makes her feel
jump,
good about it.
it helps really define it.
Yeah.
But they obviously make that a choice to not define it when they decide to do that too.
Right.
They
yeah.
want to
I mean,
leave the
'cause it's
audience
just-
in that like
Mhm.
suspended.
Yeah. You're like, how exactly
anxiety.
long is this? But it doesn't really matter. I think they do a good job of showing them age physically. I think that Billy Crystal does age up. And Rachel was talking about Meg Ryan's makeup
Hair.
and stuff like that and hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the time period specific stuff of like late 70s versus early 80s, like her. She's going for, I don't know what it is, all like poofed out. And then it's more perm. And then it's, that progression.
She has great hair. Like the
Yeah.
whole time. Like it is very period specific, but also it still looks really good.
It does. Yeah, it looks really good. Their personalities also age.
Which is what I find probably the most interesting.
Because I could see myself and I could see college me in college Billy Crystal, right? How you're just so confident and you are like doing the most thinking about the world and society and philosophy and stuff like in that time period. Especially these guys from like University of Chicago who are going to New York. I mean, they were right in that like perfect sweet spot for that. And then 5 years later, he's like, "Oh, I didn't say that. Well, if I did, it was probably more about this."
I love how they
mellows
both
out.
have those moments of, oh, I didn't say that.
Hmm.
I can't remember what hers is right this minute, but it'll come up again. Oh,
Yeah,
it
she
was about
definitely does.
Casablanca.
Right.
It was
Yes,
about
how she would
how
have stayed with.
yeah, I liked that. I did notice that I did pause like 5 times during that first section. I think this podcast has ruined movies for me because I'm like,
Oh no,
"Oh, I've gotta find the deeper meaning." I've gotta
you do
really
need to find the.
articulate what I
I did
wanna
the
say.
opposite. I didn't take any notes until we were like 45 minutes in. I just would let the half of it wash over me, and then I could come back with some more fully formed, coherent thoughts.
I love it. That's so funny. I did pause a lot. I'm like, "Jeremy, do you agree with this? Is this true?
Yeah,
What's going on here? Does
from
this
a
really?"
man's perspective,
Yeah.
Jeremy.
Yeah. Um, that was quite interesting. I
And
do think he's, like, so opinionated, but I did say I love
yes,
this because multiple times up to the diner scene, the whole time I shouldn't say the whole time, a lot of times, Billy Crystal is like Harry is like, "Well, all men think this way. All men do
yes,
this. All men." And he says
right.
it, like,
It's very
over
all or
and
nothing.
over and
Yeah,
over, and then I liked it the diner scene because she flipped it and she's like, all women, hello."
yeah.
Like, you think you're telling naive me all of this stuff that I don't know about men.
hmm
It's cute. It's cute that you think you know this about women.
I think the movie does a good job of giving them parallels. Like you said, they both have things that they forgot that they said. They're able to foil each other and not like top each other. It doesn't make it so that I don't think even by the end Billy Crystal is the protagonist. I think they're co-protagonists because they get about pretty much equal screen time. I mean, maybe he gets a couple of minutes more just because he's like brooding while he's walking. But we're cutting to her at the party too.
Yeah.
So it shows that they're a match for each other, I think, intellectually.
I think that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They can keep up with each other.
And so just like it's showing them progressing both physically and emotionally and like developing as people, it also goes from summer to fall to winter. Right? When we're in that early scenes where she's dropping him off, that's clearly like right at the end of the school year, right? And she's going to go get a job in New York and all that kind of stuff. And it's hot and they're more sweaty. And then you get all the fall scenes in New York with their big jackets and their sweaters and the gorgeous shots of Central Park, which I like when a movie does that kind of in the background, right? When it's rain, it's when it's going to be a more angsty scene or
It's like
the
all pushing you
changing
into
of the
these
season.
feelings
hmm
that you don't.
It's very Fox and the Hound,
Yes.
right? The seasons are changing in a way that's very relevant to what's happening in the plot.
Yeah. I agree with that. I really like how when they become friends, I mean, I spend a lot of the time wondering why they're friends in the first place. And I think it's just
Right.
because, like you said, they like intellectually can match each other.
hmm
Like they can challenge each other enough and make each other think that they keep coming back to it.
Yeah.
So I like that. And
They get to that point, but at first they have to just happen to see each other, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at first it's coincidence the first 3 times.
Yeah.
And it's like she said, well, you're the only person in New York that I know. And it turns out not to really matter. She goes and makes friends. It wasn't just like a given that they were attached at the hip from when they met. And I think that's, again, more of how things worked in the 80s. Right? When you don't have cell phones, you don't know each other's numbers or addresses. If you don't see each other at the bookstore, you may never connect again.
Let's talk about that for a second. Would you, somebody that you had met that made some sort of an impact, but your life has passed, 5 years have gone by, you see them in the store, do you say hi?
I probably say hi. Unless there was some like really negative interaction. If it wasn't negative, even if it was just someone I recognized from like, hey, we were at that thing together one time, I say hi. I keep it moving.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily sit down for a whole thing.
So if you weren't like walking past them, what if they were on the other side of the store? Or I'm trying to think of like, you wouldn't naturally be in their sphere unless you walked over to see them.
I think it depends on how well I know them or how strongly we connected, right? It might just be a wave or like a head nod or like a salute or something. If I'm looking at them and they like make eye contact and recognize me, then maybe like a go over there. I think it's fair. I don't
What if
think it's
they
out of
don't
line.
recognize you?
If they don't recognize me, I don't do it. No, I don't go and be like, remember me from this? No.
Yeah. So you kind of pick up all the verbal cues and then, or nonverbal cues, and then
Yeah.
make your choice. Okay. I
Yeah.
was just kind of wondering because I feel like sometimes this just happened in When Harry Met Sally. Like they both made an impact on each other enough to remember each other.
Yeah.
Like the first time at the airport, they remembered each other enough, but not like it wasn't super like they remembered that they knew each other, but maybe they didn't remember the details.
I think she did.
And
Because she immediately says to Joe, like, ugh, that guy, he didn't even remember me. Like, she knew, she remembered, I think, the context.
Yeah.
Like, it was the worst, that weirdest night of my life or whatever.
Yeah. So just wondering, like, people remember things differently, and sometimes you think you connected with somebody and maybe you didn't.
Sure.
So I just kind of throwing that around there.
Yeah, Harry and Sally are living in a world that is like a social world that is totally unfamiliar to me in terms of like having exes and like intimacy of relationships. And like the broad big city social circle of he knew her, but then he happened to know the guy that she was dating and like how things are reconnecting. Like I've always lived in small towns. I have had one significant other in my life who I am currently married to. So it's just not, I wouldn't find myself in the same situations, but it didn't speak to me as being unrealistic the way they handled it.
Okay. I mean, I don't think it was unrealistic either. I was just curious if you'd had any other experiences with that kind of thing.
I'm always seeing old students that I previously had who are now like 22 or something at the grocery store or whatever. I mean, it does happen all the time. It happens sometimes. And usually, like, I recognize them first. Usually. I did have a thing just like a month ago. We were at Mitch's birthday party at Rogge, and Rachel and I are sitting there, and we're kind of realizing that it's going to be us and then all of Mitch's work friends who we don't know. And we're like, oh, okay, it's one of these situations. And then a couple sits down right across from us, like a tall young guy and his girlfriend or whatever. And I'm just kind of talking to Rachel, and the guy leans over and he goes, Mr. Merriman? And I was like,
oh my goodness.
Hi, wait, Keller? Like who? What? And we just talked for like the next hour and a half, you know, about not like about middle school, but like, what's your life like now? What's going on? Like, this is crazy. And like, he's an adult now and he's ordering, you know, alcoholic beverages sitting across from me. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure you're an 8th grader. Like, you're still an 8th grader.
You're not allowed to order that, buddy.
Yeah. So that's the closest approximation I have, I think, to these kind of situations.
That's really fun. Jeremy and I find ourselves in that situation a lot where it's us and whoever we're at the party or whatever, and then all of the rest of the people in their life that the circles don't necessarily converge very much.
Right.
So I definitely relate to that. Okay, how did you think about, I'm kind of going out of order here, but
it's fine.
I liked when they are putting together the rug, they're unrolling the rug in his apartment, and they're having this conversation completely, and they're just doing this thing, and they stop enough in the conversation to be like, oh, we have to turn the rug. But then they go right back to the conversation. And I
think that's the movies, baby. Like, that's great. I love that stuff.
I do too. I'm just
have
like,
people be doing something in the scenes.
I do that in my real life. Like, I'm having an intellectual side of a conversation and I'm doing something else. And it makes me so happy when somebody else can keep up with that. Yeah. Now, let me just be perfectly clear here. I don't always keep up with other people when they're doing that because you have to be following the train of thought and on the same wavelength and all that. And sometimes I miss that, but it makes me happy because I feel like it's a sign that people are really paying attention to each other and really connecting. So I always love seeing that.
Yeah, I think there's that side of it. And then there's the movie making side of it for me, which is like, I love that they're building, you know, as they're showing them kind of building a friendship. It could just all be sitting eating dinner. It could just be them sitting in each other's apartments and talking. But it makes the world feel more real and lived in when they're walking in a museum and he's making, he's doing goofy voices. And because that doesn't add anything, to the plot, but it's just building richness and depth of like who these people are and why
It
they
makes it more
connect.
believable because
Yes.
like, oh, if they're comfortable doing this with each other, they've obviously spent enough time with each other to know that they're okay to
Yeah.
have these funny conversations or to do this or to not get offended if I have to say we need to move the rug.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't become a whole issue. It's just something we're doing and we're moving on. I think it shows like depth of relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And so even though it's not that long of a film, everything feels really earned by the end of it. You're like, no, these two people, I know that they gel. I've seen them in lots of just really casual situations that aren't contrived. And plus, it's just dropping us into the middle of them. We don't have to see them like picking out the which museum they're going to go to and buying the ticket. It's just like they're walking through a museum. And that's what they're doing.
It is very montagey, but not traditional.
Yeah, it's not chop, chop, chop
No,
montage.
which
It's
is
like,
very fun.
yeah. It's just in media res. Like you do get the impression that you are just zooming in on these like people's
Moments.
lives. And
Yeah.
you're seeing a timeline of their relationship. And you're just popping in here, 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 and here, and that's okay. You're not only popping in for the hard hitting, like cheating on each other or like whatever, like the huge things, but you do get the big things.
Yeah.
Like when they go on a double date, they try to set each other up with their best friends and their best friends just fall for each other. That's really good.
I really like that. And I love how two things for that. Before they set them up on the date, I love how Princess Leia is always like, Marie is like, I found his credit card statement.
He's never going to leave her.
He's never going to leave
Yeah.
her. She says it like 4 times. And
Yes,
they're
of
all
course
like,
he's not. We all know
we all
he's
know
not.
this. You know this. I know this. We all know it.
You're right. Of course you're right.
And I thought it was really funny too how they have the conversation. I think this is the one that they're having on the way to the date. Sally and Marie, and they talk about how if he did ever leave his wife, they probably wouldn't be friends anymore.
Yeah.
Which I think is so interesting, and I don't know that it's such a real part of the world. If you have a friend that's single and they start dating somebody and you don't gel with that person and they become married and they have this whole relationship, the friendship does change.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you may not even be friends anymore because you don't like the other person. Totally happens. Totally realistic. I never see that happening. Actually, I shouldn't say I never see that happening in movies. I should say I don't think it happens enough because I think it happens a lot in real life.
Yeah, and that's good when you can kind of see a real life scenario in a movie, for sure.
I always feel like we're lucky when we meet friends who have spouses that are also friends and we like.
Right.
But
yeah, couple friends.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I also love how they're both like, well, don't tell her tonight. She's in a
Mhm.
really vulnerable place. Don't do anything tonight.
Did you think that was them actually talking about themselves? Is it one of those things where they're trying to pretend like he's really vulnerable, but like really it's me?
I think they were just trying not to look bad with each other.
Oh, maybe.
Like, Sally set Harry up on this date. The date didn't go well, and she doesn't want to look bad if her friend bails on him.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of...
Oh, they're just trying to save face. Yeah, that could be.
Yeah.
So it's very two ships passing in the night. Like the timing's never quite right. You know, they're dating other people. When we get to that Pictionary scene, right? So clearly Leia and Jess are like really, enjoying their relationship, but Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan are dating other people. And I liked that. I thought it was going to be a more direct courting, like a more direct dating and then break up, dating, break up, and then finally date like all the way together, just like a more traditional sort of rom-com plot direction. But I think that two ships passing in the night, timing never lining up, kind of Joe March and Laurie from Little Women.
Mhm.
I think that is more emotionally resonant for me.
Yeah. Because you're like, you guys are perfect, but it's just not the right time. It's just not
Yeah.
working, and you see it. And I think it's
I
maybe
see it, but you don't.
yeah, and it layers every time something
Yes.
happens. You're like, you see it more, and it gets deeper, and you're like, why isn't this happening?
Mhm.
Did you know
Mhm.
she was drawing baby talk?
I don't know what you just said that sentence. I don't know what it means.
In Pictionary.
Oh, in Pictionary. Yes, I did.
Me too.
I did very clearly. I think of myself as being good at games that are trying to get you to say like a real phrase that exists. I know I have read a lot and watched enough stuff that I feel like I know a lot of those 2, 3, 4 word like idioms or just little cultural phrases. So once it's baby, then my brain's just like, okay, baby food, baby diaper, baby talk. Like there's just only so many 2-word phrases that
It's
go with
very
baby.
clearly lips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did think there were lips. Yeah. But you've got that guy who is just stuck on one train of thought and is only guessing like monkey related stuff, which I would do as a bit if I didn't know it yet. But that's, I think, realistic to how that game goes.
I like what was your takeaway when they meet? Is it Helen in the karaoke store? Which, by the way, how funny is it that they pick up the karaoke machine and they're like, "Oh, let's just try."
Yeah.
Surrey with the fringe on top, I think is it?
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
side note, Hugh Jackman sings.
In some kind of production of Oklahoma?
Pretty
What
positive.
do you mean who Jackman sings? Like, what do you mean by
he was
Hugh
in?
like, that's a song from a musical that
Yep.
Hugh Jackman did
He
not
played the
originally play
guy-
the lead in.
He played the guy in Oklahoma and sang it.
In what?
A movie production of the
Of
musical.
Oklahoma?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not familiar with the film production of Oklahoma, just the stage production. And I do not think he originated Oklahoma on Broadway.
I mean, I'm not saying that he did. I'm just saying
Right.
he
But
sang
you are
it,
thinking of
and
it as
was
a
good.
Hugh Jackson original. Like that this is the guy, Hugh Jackman. I'm like, it is not, but it is fine if that's how you associate it.
It is definitely not an original, but it's still good.
Sure. So the whole time, you're asking me about him meeting Helen. Again, I don't have a lot of context for this in my personal life where it's like, oh, we're running into like my ex, they were married for 5 years or whatever. Usually, I mean, there are people that I do not like running into or like would prefer to avoid if I saw them at the store, and usually I just successfully avoid them. So I haven't had the like, well, technically we didn't leave on bad enough terms, like I should still go over and say hi to him. Like I just don't have a lot of good analogs for that in my life.
So, do you have anybody in your history that you've had a
Sex with.
no a bad falling out, maybe a blindsided falling out? Like you thought you were good,
like,
and then all of a sudden this person doesn't want to be your
relationship wise,
friend.
not like
Yeah.
work wise or something.
Yeah.
No, not like there was like one day we're friends and then one day we're not. I mean, there's people that you just sort of like drift apart from. I certainly have that. I can't
But
think of anyone
those
where it's like
people-
we're not friends because we had a fight.
Okay. So those people that you've drifted apart from wouldn't
Mhm.
necessarily be people you would avoid either.
Correct. Yeah. I had a buddy from college who we went to their wedding and, hung out even a few times after they got married, but we didn't really know his wife, and they started hanging out with just other people more, and kind of we stopped texting each other sort of, and didn't really see each other for a couple of years. And then when a different college buddy came to town and stayed with me, I just texted him and I was like, hey, you want to come play pool basketball? And he's like, sure. I hadn't talked to him in multiple years, and so we had been pretty good friends, and then didn't talk to each other for a couple of years, so that could be weird, but it wasn't weird. Like he just came over and we played pool basketball, and that's kind of an example of someone I would think of who's like, even after a drift apart, like it's not a big deal to even hang out again, much less see each other if we happen
There
to
was
see each
no
other.
like breakdown on why the drifting apart conversation kind of thing.
No, I mean, I think that's not really that's a very certain kind of guy. Two guys that would have that conversation. That's not something you'd jump to as two men.
Well, even in a conversation like between you and Rachel, would you be like, no, I don't know why we drifted apart, blah, 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 and like analyze that conversation.
Oh, I would. Yeah, I'd do that with Rachel, sure.
Yeah.
In the third person. I'd do it with a third friend about that. But I think that was just time and space and where we
Yeah.
lived. I don't think it was anything personality wise.
So I just brought this up or drew attention to it because I think that it's interesting how it this whole mourning period of breakups, and at one point Sally even says, I don't even know that I loved him as much as I loved the idea of him. Like she was okay
Does
with
she say
not
the idea of him? She definitely says like
the idea of
I
loving
don't.
him, maybe.
Looking back, I'm glad I didn't marry him. But why didn't he want to marry me at the time?
Well, that's a
Which is like,
different conversation. I'm talking about
oh,
earlier on.
gotcha. You're still earlier.
She's like, I'm fine, it's fine.
Yeah.
And
when
then she talks about
when we first meet in Princess Leia. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. It's like two toss ups because she's okay with not being with him and she's trying to figure out her feelings and she's good with that. That's totally one thing. And then when she sees him later and she falls into the whole like, I thought he didn't want to be married, but he just didn't want to be married with me.
Yeah.
And which are two different things. Like, it's not like she loves him. She doesn't want to be married with him.
Just wanted the affirmation.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's making it about her.
Yeah. Which it is about her because it's her.
Yeah.
But it's also not because he wasn't necessarily saying, I guess he was saying, I don't want to be married to you, but maybe he didn't know what he wanted either.
Well, what he's saying is, I want to be married to her and not you.
Yeah.
And so for him, it's more about the person. It's more about the yes. And for her, all she has left is the no.
The no. Yeah. Yeah. And I do find that to be, I don't know why he called her to tell her that anyways. Hey, ex, I'm getting married.
I do not know what the protocol is there. For someone that you dated seriously for 5 years, the courtesy call.
Well, just to be clear, I did not call my ex-husband and tell him that I was getting remarried.
Yeah. That ended, as I understand it, less amicably even than Meg Ryan and Joe. Right?
Yes. Yes, I would agree. I would agree with that statement.
Okay. So how do we feel about Billy Crystal as rom-com leading man at this point in 1989? We're not
my
We're not
favorite,
setting rom-coms
but-
with Billy Crystal types as stars now.
I don't love him as the lead.
Wow.
I liked him in, don't get me wrong, I liked him in, oh gosh, the cowboy movie, City Slickers.
Not
But
seen
it wasn't a rom-com type movie. It was like a sort of a coming of age at middle age movie.
Okay.
It's like a midlife crisis movie, sort of, I guess, maybe.
Okay.
But I don't know. It's very interesting.
I liked him as the lead in this because I felt like he was able to do the different versions of Harry well, like the young, abrasive, confident, the slick back lawyer type, and then the like supportive friend. I thought he just had a magnetic personality. I thought it was understandable to me why Meg Ryan it didn't seem unrealistic that she would like him, but I just appreciate that he's not Hemsworth level, like, you obviously like me because I'm a hot guy, right?
Yeah.
He's like, he has more everyman. He's just like a witty, like smart everyman that you would realistically fall in love with. He's more husband material that you would fall in love with over the long term. And I appreciated him.
I should say I do like Billy Crystal, but maybe I just didn't like Harry that much.
Oh, okay.
So maybe that's clouding how I feel about him as a leading man.
Well, I guess we'll get to it now. When they have their fight after the first time they sleep together, I'm Team Harry for like those next 20 minutes where he's like keeps having to apologize to her, like he did something awful and she's so mad at him. And I'm like, I don't really understand what this conflict is about, Meg Ryan. You just want him to stay and cuddle longer? He's like, I have to go home. I have to go to work tomorrow.
Well, yeah, but then they
False?
were at the restaurant and she was like, that was a mistake, which she shouldn't have said if she didn't think so. And then he was like, I'm so glad you said that, and agreed with her.
Like when they're showering separately and he's like, I hope she says it first. And she goes, I hope I get to say it first.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, it seems like it's all falling in line. Like, what exactly was she upset with him about?
The problem is that this is just my opinion. She did not know what she wanted. She didn't really want it to be a mistake. She just felt that was the best way to save face. What
That's
she
what you're
wanted
supposed
was
to say.
to say, I feel like this was a mistake. And for him to go, was it?
But he's walking a real tightrope here where he doesn't want to be, you know, like as he says, I didn't go over, and I believe him. I didn't go over to your
Right.
apartment like to take advantage of you in a vulnerable emotional state. Like he went over to comfort her.
Yeah.
And she was like kissing him. I mean, I get that, like that's just where she was at. Is he supposed to be like, no, it wasn't. Like you love me. Like there's a lot of worlds where that doesn't play well either.
They shut down the conversation. After they say that, they just stop talking. So if they
problem
had
is that
talked
neither
a
of them
little
is-
bit more, yeah, they might.
They're not being as emotionally vulnerable as they should be,
Yeah.
both of them. Okay, and I get that. But then she just gets to be, what is she angry at him for?
Well, then I think it's we're not in the same place in our relationship, in our feelings, and she has to put distance there, and it's easier for her to be angry at him than it is to just say, I love you. You obviously don't love me. We can't be friends anymore.
Okay, well then it just seems like he's right and she's wrong here to me. Like he's like, "Hey, can we talk?" And she's like, "No. I hate like don't talk to me, don't call me." And he's like, "Okay." Freaking like what did I don't get it. It seems like there's a right and wrong here to me.
There's not, because it's two people with very vastly different feelings. Not that I'm not
I disagree.
supporting
They both
misunderstandings.
did love each other.
But they
just
didn't
both didn't
know
want to
it.
admit it to each other,
Right.
and I get that.
Well,
So
I also
then
think Harry
How
doesn't
that plays
know.
out is she just gets to be mad at him and everyone agrees with that?
I don't
For what?
think everyone agrees with it.
Carrie Fisher agrees with it. Well, I don't know. Maybe not. She doesn't tell her she's being an idiot.
Because she's feeling her feelings. Like, you can't judge. You can totally judge, but as a good friend, like, you can ask questions like, are you sure that you're mad at him? Because maybe you love him and you feel rejected, and so now you're mad because you feel rejected. Like, that's the conversation
Which
she
sounds
should
like
have
a way
with
of
him.
saying you don't have real justification to be mad at him right now. So if we agree that she would have been like accurate in saying that, then it sounds like we agree that she shouldn't have been mad at him. You're right. She is mad at him because she doesn't want to be the real thing that she is, which is an unrequited
Yeah.
love situation with
Yes.
him, which is where she thinks she is, but it's not where she would actually be if they both opened up to each other about it.
If they both opened up, but it takes
Yeah.
4 weeks for Harry to realize, or 3 weeks for Harry to realize he actually loves her, and it's not, he just doesn't want to go back to the relationship that they had before.
Well, he even tries to do that, and she won't. She can't.
She can't, because it puts
So
her
who
in a
doesn't
really
really
bad
want that? Is
position.
it her or is it him? I think it's her.
I think we're getting so down a rabbit hole. I gotta retrack where we're at.
I just don't know what he did wrong. He keeps apologizing to her, and it's not clear to me for what.
He's apologizing to her to get her to talk to him.
Like the I'm
It's
sorry
not-
for whatever I did. Please just talk to me again thing.
Yeah, that's what I think. Because he just once he
I don't
can,
want to talk to you. Stomping away from him at the wedding. On what grounds? Because she keeps saying like he just bolted out of there. He just disappeared. He ran away like right after it happened. It's like, I don't know. Like he laid in bed and he was clearly like uncomfortable with it at the time when they're cuddling. But was he just supposed to call into work the next day?
I mean,
Maybe.
she knows all of his tricks. So he told her all of them. So she's probably reading into it a lot too.
Yeah. She's feeling used. and feeling had. I don't know. I do like him better without the beard. He has the beard in the middle. And I like him better after he shaves it off and before he gets it. You don't have any thoughts on the beard?
Not specifically, but I would agree. I don't feel super strongly about it.
Sure. How do we feel about Billy Crystal as being this guy who she goes, you've slept with half of New York. Like, I mean, he's this playboy. He's just always pulling girls left and right. Is this unrealistic? I wrote down Billy Crystal, BDE. Is that something? Like, how is he? Like, how is this? What's the deal here? Billy Crystal as ladies' man.
Not unbelievable.
Okay, because it's like a women like the funny guy.
I think women like the funny guy, but I also think you can be authentic to who you are and know how to light that up a little bit in a way that gets you the date, the action.
Yeah. He knows who he is, and that's charming about him.
Yeah. Confidence. Okay. It's a thing. And there's a real fine line between confidence and arrogance, and sometimes it's hard to distinguish.
Mm-hmm. And probably he's exaggerating his conquest to some extent.
Probably, for sure.
Yeah. So he decides that he does actually truly love her, and he comes and does the rom-com speech about how he loves the way she orders, which we haven't even talked about. I mean, this has got to be the clip for social media. Like, so viscerally upsetting to me every time it happens.
Really?
Like, so cringy. Especially the first time, I thought it was going to become a race thing with the black waitress, and she's going like, well, if you don't have this, then do it this way, but you do have this, do this, but not that. Like, all of that stuff. Insane. Like, sociopath level ordering. Could not handle it whatsoever. And then even on the airplane, I don't like how it's, you're sort of a captive audience on an airplane. That person has to be, there's nowhere for else for them to go. Right. I don't like, jawing the ear off of your seat neighbor. I don't like being rude to the waitress. And like, fill it up 3/4 and then sprinkle some of the mix in. Maybe that's something that you could request of someone in the 80s on an airplane. But now it's like, put the water down, give me the can of ginger ale. Like, it's like they're not sitting back there doing like mixology stuff.
Yeah, for sure on the airplane, too much, way too much.
And there's no self-reflection about like, this is a person who I'm asking this of. It's just like, I deserve for you to do this. Like, she just comes off as like a bad person to me with the way she's ordering. Someone that's never worked in food service.
Yeah, I definitely think it's I don't know if it's very exaggerated, but for me, there's a line because I have different allergen requirements.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I do have to have those conversations sometimes. But
there's a way to have them.
Yeah, I try to like balance it out so it's not like so overwhelmingly a lot to ask, because there's a tipping point right there, right? Where if you're asking for too much, it's inevitably going to be wrong anyways.
True, absolutely.
So you have to find like a really good balance.
Right. Either because it's too complicated or because you're just upsetting them and then they're going to stop caring.
Yeah. My biggest food ordering story that I just always have is I ordered an M&M Blizzard with strawberries from Dairy Queen.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward.
It was not what I was expecting. I was so excited about this Blizzard, Rogge. I swear I almost cried. I know, that's so dramatic. Like, how can you be so excited about food? Well, I get excited about food, people. Let me tell you. Yeah, it was wrong. And I said, I took it back up to the counter and I was like, listen, I'm not trying to be crazy, but this is not right. And they were talking to me and she explained that if you say M&M's first, they do an M&M Blizzard and they put chocolate syrup in the M&M Blizzard and then they add the strawberries. So it's like a primarily chocolate with some strawberries and M&M's in it.
She's saying you ordered something we already have called an M&M Blizzard and then just added strawberries to it.
She said if you want it the other way, you say strawberry Blizzard, with add M&Ms.
Yeah.
And you have she didn't tell me you have to pause, but you have to pause enough to see them press the button so they don't just ring it up the other way. In fact, I actually might have said the first time a strawberry blizzard with M&Ms, but because I said it so quickly, it was the cashier shortcut was to go M&M add strawberries.
Yeah, because strawberries is more of an add-on than it is the main part of a blizzard.
Piece. Yeah. So I totally get like being specific to get what you want, but I also think there's a fine line. Like I said, they'll either get it wrong, for on purpose or on accident, or it's just a super inconvenient. Like read the room.
You got to understand how it's coming across, right?
Yeah.
When she goes, she's just like, okay, I'm on my throne. I'm the queen of ordering here, and you're taking notes. Okay, good. You're taking notes. Like it's like that's the vibe is like the persnicketyness.
Yeah.
And because I've been to restaurants with you, and you're like, okay, or you or anyone that has like allergies or like really specific food stuff. If you're like, I'm so sorry, like I have this thing, so if there's any way that we could do this, but like with that, is that something that works? She kept saying. So like the very first time in the diner, that's the worst because she's going, and if you don't have this, then I'll just take this, but I won't have it that way. That's a conversation. There's questions. It's okay. Do you have full whipped cream? Can you make whipped cream? No? Okay, shoot. Well, then I guess in that case, I'll just do this. Like she could have ordered the same things, but done it in a polite way.
Yeah, you are so right with that because I was thinking, I forgot what she said by the time she got through that. I would have never, even if I had been taking notes.
Yeah.
Like, tell me what you want. Okay, we can do that. Done. Like, then you wouldn't have had to add the extra 5 conditions on there.
Right. She's pre-putting contingencies on. She's assuming incompetence. She's assuming lack of quality. And it's all tone. I mean, even if she said almost the exact same things, but with a tone that's like, we're both human beings. Let's have this social interaction that we have to have. Then that's different. But when her tone is like, and maybe it's just coming from a conventionally attractive white woman that like makes it more triggering for me. But like, no, get off your high horse about this. Like you're at a restaurant, they have things on the menu. You don't get to just decide that actually there's a Meg Ryan menu and you're going to order things differently.
Yeah.
And so I said that I was going to talk about how Rachel kind of does this, right? She'll go to a brewery place and get a burger and get every single thing on the side. And we talk about her tone and it doesn't always get better. Like I will like stand apart from her when she's ordering to not be associated with the anger. Like
but then
I've
they see you
seen
sit
her
together
order
and they know.
and then walked up and they are clearly still like frustrated about how she orders. And I'll be like, my wife, like, sorry, how can I just, what's the simplest thing? Like, I'm just so apologetic about it. And she was like, we paused the movie and she goes, you cannot get on the podcast and say that this is how I order things. And I was like, I agree that you're not as bad as she is, but I'm going to get on the podcast and say you are because that's how it feels in my heart. The way that you feel cringing at how she's ordering is how I feel cringy about how you actually do order, which I agree isn't as extreme, but it happens enough. And it's now like every time she orders, like I'm already tense, like leaning back in my chair or whatever.
Oh my goodness.
It just makes it feel worse. Yeah.
Jeremy,
it's very upsetting to me.
Do I make you feel anxious when I order food with quirky requests? He's thinking. I can't tell what you said. He said not anxious. Does it annoy you? What's the verb you want to go with?
It's both for me.
He had to think too hard about that, I think. So maybe I should reevaluate my ordering.
Well, I want to be clear. I haven't, ordered at a restaurant with you as often, but I think it's different, right? When you have like dietary restrictions, then that's one thing. Rachel is like, well, I like the lettuce on top of the tomato or whatever. It's like, it just has to be my way. Like, it's not about dietary restrictions or anything like that.
But if she just orders it all on the side, then she can assemble it according to her plan.
Maybe it's because I worked at a fast food, like a burger place in high school, but like ordering every burger topping on the side. If I'm the waitress, I'm like, you can make hamburgers at home, right? Like that's allowed. Like there's no good way to do that. I've been the dude making the burger behind the line and it says everything on the side and you go, okay, so they want like a salad bowl and for me to place all of the ingredients in there. And then now like
It makes you feel like, what do they really want?
the
How do I
form factor
succeed
of
at
this is very
this?
different than how I'm used to handing it up
Yeah.
to the line. How are we going to get this in a bag? Like it is so drastically different from just like, hey, I want this, extra ketchup. Like anything like that. You do or don't want this on it. You want extra. You want light. I can handle any of that, right? That's just cutting the piece of lettuce in half and putting it on there. But when you're like, put the tomato on, but only if it's this, and like, or like take it off or whatever. If you want it all on the side at a restaurant, that's a thing that little kids do in my head. You're ordering like a child.
When I feel myself starting to get into contingencies,
Mhm.
I feel like this is too complicated. I have to
Yeah.
reset.
That's when you just ask a question,
Yeah.
right? Okay, do you have oat milk? Because it's all gonna you have to have a couple game plans in your head. You ask the one question that can take you down the path. Okay, great, you do. So that means I'm going to go in this direction.
And
kind of thing.
sometimes I'm like, this just is not even worth it for me to
Yeah,
figure out. I'll have a salad. No croutons.
that's easy. Sometimes I would like my hash browns extra crispy, and that's about the most. I will sometimes ask for them, and sometimes that's too much. Sometimes it would give me too much anxiety to say, and can you make the hash browns extra crispy?
Oh, I always ask that.
Right.
And
that's
for my
great. I'm
bacon to
glad
be
for you that you
crispy.
can. I would like to. I can't.
Oh, it's so interesting how everybody has their own quirkiness about ordering and like
Mhm.
honestly draws on their past experiences. I have some people I know.
Trauma-informed ordering.
Honestly, it kind of is. I have some people I know that, they will send their steak back all the time, which I get to a certain extent if it's not. I mean, I like mine medium rare usually.
Yeah.
Um,
But when you order it medium rare, a third of the time it comes back like they barely touched it on the pan. Like it's super rare, like raw all the way through, seared on the outside. And you're like, this is not. I can look up the definition of medium rare. This is not. I'm so sorry.
but if they
if I'm
order
getting a
it
nice steak,
medium and it comes out medium rare, very rare, I'm like, I get that. You send it back.
yeah,
But you do it in a polite way, like, listen, I'm so
Mhm.
sorry. This is not like cooked enough for me.
you get the waiter on your side about
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
And I feel like there are definitely ways to do that. But somebody was just telling me that their parent does that so much when they were a kid and they worked in food for a while in
Mhm.
food service. And they're like, it has like traumatized them. They're like overly nice because they have to make up for,
Mhm.
like you were saying, like the quirkiness of the order. And I'm like, I feel bad because nobody's getting the food they want then.
Yeah, it's tough.
There's got to be a balance in there. Like Rogge, you should be able to get your hash browns crispy without feeling bad about it.
Well, here's the problem. I ask for them crispy about half the time, and 3/4 of the time that I asked for them crispy, they didn't.
I know.
They didn't leave them
I
on
hate
longer.
that.
Like
Yeah.
it didn't change. They went, my hash browns are already crispy, whatever, and just made them regular, and that's fine. So because it has a low success rate,
Oh, you just
it just dissuades me from even asking about it.
okay.
Now we used to go to Maria's and ask them to deep fry the hash browns. Can you make them up and then just like toss them in the deep fryer? And that did turn out deliciously. But asking for hash browns to be deep fried just brought shame on me from like a what am I eating standpoint, and so I couldn't continue doing that because I'm also getting eggs and sausage and pancakes.
Yeah.
I don't also need French fries with that.
Meh.
Something about the phrase deep fried. I want them deep fried.
Yeah.
I want them that way, but I do not need them that way.
I mean, that's a whole conversation. I like
about like food and healthiness trauma.
Yeah. One of the things that I will order when I get eggs, I used to all the time. Now I'm less needy about this or less
This
whatever.
is going to become half the podcast is us just
is
talking
food
about
ordering.
We haven't talked about tipping yet.
Oh dear. I love that she was like, my share and taking the math.
Oh
Anyways.
my goodness. Again. So upsetting. So upsetting. You can't tip 90 cents. No, I mean, okay, this was 45 years ago. So I guess that 90 cents was like $3, but
So I wasn't paying attention to how much she tipped on her food,
I think it was less than $1. I think it was 90 cents.
on her $6 meal.
I don't know how much the meal was. She just said 15% of mine comes out to 90 cents. So we'll just leave whatever.
I do have a thing about tipping, though. We try to, like, tip really good if it's really good, but we tip usually 20 to 25% standard.
Minimum
Yeah.
baseline.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think
'Cause-
is common, but now I'm
Not
going to have to
universal.
go in and look it up. Just double check. Make sure we're not under tipping people.
No, I think that's fine. I think anyone would tell you that 20 to 25% is fine. If you think it was great and you want to do more, then do it. I mean, I think you and I would both agree that we wish that our society and economic structure was set up in such a way that these workers were just paid fairly for their labor, and it wasn't incumbent upon the customer's guilt to make sure that they get enough money to take home to their children.
Yes.
I agree with the European model of they're just paid a living wage and we don't need to do tipping because everyone just will give good service anyway. That's better.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't have but because I feel, even though I feel that way, me not tipping isn't going to solve the problem. It's just going to make that person's day suck.
Right. And I think, like, we're saying you have to perform consistently every single time you're on your job, which is unrealistic. Like, yes, do a good job for the sake of doing a good job because it's your job, but you have multiple people judging you as a server. You're doing multiple
Mhm.
tables and everybody's judging you the entire time. And you have to perform for all of those people. I just think that's overwhelming.
Well,
Inevitably,
I
you're going to
mean,
forget to grab a refill.
this is going to get to the problem, like just a major problem with capitalism in general, right? If we have these jobs, no one budgets for like, okay, well, my workers are going to be 80% efficient. Like you plan for them to be 100% efficient. Like no one really works a job where it not going great sometimes is thought of as fine. I mean, I guess that exists, but we, in some ways I agree that
We
like,
want
it's not realistic to hold them to
100%
this standard, but like
optimum
that's how
Yeah.
our economy is set up, is that everyone is supposed to be working their very hardest all the time, even though we know that's not realistic, but then they're just going to get punished for it if they can't or don't,
Yeah, it's annoying.
because that would maximize profits for these corporations who are seeing record profits after a pandemic, after a pandemic, ongoing. So yeah, when Harry met Sally, I didn't love the rant when he goes and meets her at the very end and is like, "I love the way you order. I love your eyes looking like this or whatever." I was like, okay, like that was a little tropey for me. That was
Or
a little
was
like, this
it
is just what you do at the end of a rom-com,
like,
and kind of trapped her into saying yes.
and trapped her into saying yes, even though you
Mhm.
think she didn't have a right to be mad? Wait, you didn't say have a right to be mad. You didn't understand why she was mad.
Correct. She's allowed to not date him if she wants to, but to be actively mad at him and like making him feel bad for unclear to me what, I didn't like. I was on team him, but that doesn't mean that she is legally obligated to marry him or anything.
Right, for sure. I like that he lists some of those things just because it makes me know that he knows her.
Right. Yeah, that's what he's doing.
And I think he does it too because she says at some point, I don't want to be a consolation, which
Right.
to her is like, we had sex, we're friends, you just fell into this,
Mhm.
and
I've heard how
don't
you talk
really
about
want it.
women and
Yeah.
what your strategy is and
Like,
all that stuff.
what makes me different in this space.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked that about it because it makes you feel like he knows her. I
But then
don't know why
even
she
she
kept
says-
saying, I hate
Hmm.
you.
Yeah. But you're talking when you talk, it makes me unable to hate you.
Yeah.
And that feels like we're bordering on gaslighting in a way that, you want to avoid if possible.
Yeah. I think that it's about lying to yourself and not wanting yourself to feel the feelings you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really hard. I think that's why people don't I think that's why people stay in relationships. They have grown apart or they've changed what they've wanted, but they're not honest about it. But I used to think like, oh, it's because they're not honest about it for the other person. But now I think it's they just didn't know themselves well enough to
Yeah.
know that's what they wanted because it takes work to know yourself and to like be mindful of what you're doing.
Yeah. There's a lot of people out there who are not introspective at all.
Yeah. So I think that's
We haven't
the
even
thing.
talked about the most famous scene from When Harry Met Sally.
I was going to ask if you wanted to chat about that.
I mean, we can. I don't know that I have a lot of thoughts. I mean, I think Meg Ryan does a good job. Like, it's funny. Just in the like cringe, like the office level, like awkwardness of being in such a public place. There in my head,
She
I knew this
committed.
scene existed.
Yeah.
I always thought they were in line walking up to, when I hear deli, I think like butcher shop because
Yeah.
I'm from a small town. So like I'm picturing them like in line with tickets, like waiting to get their like
Slice of
roast
meat.
beef sliced or whatever. And I thought she was kind of standing in line, and the lady after her said it. But they are packed in like a Seinfeld like diner deli, surrounded by old Jewish people. And the way that everyone just continues to stop and turn and stare at her, and the guys staring at her creepily, like
Yeah.
not confused, but just like who are into it, like that's weird. And she just really, you know what's going to happen. Even my first time watching the film, I knew that it was coming once they sat down in that deli. And like as it dawns on her, like, why don't I just freaking do this? Like, why not? You know, what's going to happen? It was funny. Yeah. I mean, it's a good, way to seize your sexuality as a woman kind of thing. Like, I can do this, like, what are you going to do kind of thing? Whereas all the time women's sexuality is like tamped down so much. So I thought it was funny.
So many things. First of all, I forgot to say that this movie was rated R. So plug your little ears or don't listen if you shouldn't be listening.
Earmuffs.
Yes. And 2, I liked how I'm going to stop counting after 2 and just start listing them is how it's going to go. But I like how he was like, are you okay? Like he was not catching on at first. Like, are you okay? And then he doesn't interrupt her, which I think is funny. He's not like, okay, stop. He lets her continue the whole thing.
As he should.
And then my other
you as a man need to sit down and listen.
How foreign this concept is to him. It never happens to him. A woman faking an orgasm. And this does definitely happen.
Wow, definitely. Strong words, Jeremy.
Not for Jeremy. This does happen because of a lack of communication and willingness.
Yeah. A lack of communication. Sure. Yeah. Feeling like you're in a situation where you need to or should do that just to get something over with or whatever, or because you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings or something. Yeah.
And I think that this is going to get deep. You can cut this if you need to, but I think that I am a fan of if you talk about it, you know what you're looking for. So in different areas of the country and different religious areas of the country, people aren't talking about sex.
Yeah.
You don't really know what's, quote, normal, or maybe normal is a bad way to say it, but what commonly can happen during sex. You don't have any bar for like what happens, what should happen, what can happen, what you need to look out for if there's issues. You don't know any of that. So you're just like flying blindly. And I'm just going to say, like, because it's, quote, shameful to talk about it, you're missing out on good experiences to figure out how to make it good.
I think normal's a loaded phrase there because you feel bad if you want or would enjoy doing something that isn't normal. Maybe if like the word normal gets thrown around too much, you're like, oh, well, this wouldn't be normal. So like, I can't even, bring that up type of thing.
Okay. Normal is definitely a bad phrase, but
well,
you know what
I don't
never
think you used
see?
it wrong. I think it just like
it's loaded.
That inclusion in the world of talking about sex like puts a stigma on anything that is abnormal.
I never see
which
in
could
movies
still be safe.
Anybody cleaning up after sex.
In movies and stuff, yeah.
Never see
Agreed.
that. Whoever talks about that. Did people even know that was a thing? I see a lot of people I don't see really. But, you get the idea that there's a lot of shower sex happening. Is that happening? Because I feel like that would be cold and super uncomfortable.
It can be tough logistically, yeah.
I mean, I've tried it a couple times. That's not the best I've ever had. I'm just, you know what I mean? Like,
The
people
angles
aren't
are
having
tough.
conversations about these things, or maybe they are and they're just not having them with me. I don't know. But that's my whole take on the whole sex conversation is if people talked about it a little bit more and less ashamedly, you might be having more fun.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a whole nother angle too to discuss this particular thing where it comes to faking an orgasm is, and I could be wrong just from the male perspective could be inaccurate here, but what I'm thinking is what leads you to feel like you should fake that or pretend like you're having a better time than you are? And I assume, perhaps incorrectly, that part of that is just because, as there's a power dynamic, right? As a woman, like, you don't want to make the guy think that something's wrong, or, it's in your best interest that he feels strong and powerful and like he's doing the right thing. Cause, there's lots of cases where if the guy is mad, then that doesn't go well for the woman. I mean, like,
Yeah,
just
there
from
are implications
domestic abuse
outside
and
of the
stuff.
act. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like sad that someone would feel the need to fake it to me, because you're like, okay, what are the implications of that? Like, why would you feel that way? There's no answer that comes other than like, I want to spare his feel. Normally it's fine, but I want to spare his feelings this time. Besides that, the answers are usually bad and sad, right? I would assume.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And nobody ever wants to like dig into that either.
right.
Like, your partner doesn't, I shouldn't say this in like absolutes, but I imagine the partner that you're faking it with doesn't actually want to know that you're faking it for all the reasons you feel like you need to fake it. But then also, if you have to talk about it, if they can't have a conversation that's like, I'm not helping you get where you need to go.
Yeah.
Then
The
they're internalizing
stigmatization
it.
of
It's
the
not
sex
about
conversation
Yeah.
is just making it worse for everyone.
Yeah.
Because it's so tied to shame, right?
Yeah.
Even if it would be helpful to be like, hey, look, I've been having to fake it because of this. Could we be doing this instead? As soon as you said I'm having to fake it, the guy is just spiraling, right?
Yes.
Immediately. Understandably, because of the cultural, reasons and stuff like that. So it just is all dumb.
Crazy.
But she does a great job. And then they say the line afterwards. And the line didn't really like punch for me. I mean, she just delivers it very flatly, which is maybe supposed to be like deadpan. But I mean, I don't know. I was like, oh, she said, I'll have what she's having. Like, I didn't double over laughing, when she said that or anything.
I was so much more impressed with Meg Ryan's ability to go through all that and then pick up her fork without taking a deep breath or releasing a deep breath.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's some cardio right there.
Yeah, she just goes like, stays right in eye contact and like goes for the sandwich bite. She's like, oh, see, there you go.
I would have been more intrigued to hear Harry's conversation with Jess after that about that. Like, that would have been interesting for me to hear how they carried that on.
Also, I think the I'll have what she's having is a good example of, I think this movie is well written, right? There's quips and there's wit, not in a way, things can be overwritten, something like Gilmore Girls, where they're like flying back. It's so fast and it's like a million jokes a second.
This
I didn't think it was
fast,
that.
But it wasn't so fast that...
It was fast in a like, I'm a New Yorker kind of way, not like an unrealistic level of fast.
Yeah, I liked that. And I feel like I agree with you. It was well written. I like that it wasn't... I like the cheesy rom-coms sometimes where it's just, they fall in love, they're going to fight, they're going to get back together. The end, happy, happy. I like my fair share of those, but I like this from a rom-com standpoint because it's not... I feel like it has deeper relationship stuff.
Yeah.
It's not
as rom.
Yeah.
It's not cheese rom. It's like, it's really a movie about platonic friendship and like what constitutes attraction and like how a friendship in some ways is a manifestation of like love, I think. and then that love can develop into something deeper, and that's okay. And it's okay if it doesn't, kind of thing.
I do like that, and I like how they're friends, because I think that it shows that they're buddies, right? Jess and Marie get married really quickly, and they're
Mhm.
good,
Yeah.
and they have this friendship that they've cultivated over years. Well, over time, maybe years.
Yeah.
And at the end, they sort of fall in love with it too. But I like that because I think it's really great when you can be friends with the person that you are romantically involved with, not in.
You can be friends with your romance partner?
Yeah. I feel like sometimes after the initial, like, oh, we're in love,
Uh-huh.
people stop being friends. They stop doing things with the person they love. Like life catches up and they
Oh.
get distracted and they stop like being
Yeah.
friendly. And at the beginning when they're at the game and he says, "I don't wanna date my wife," like, I thought
He's
the
like,
whole
I got
point of
married
getting
so that I
so I
wouldn't have to
yeah,
date. Yeah.
and I'm like, "Okay, I get that," but I also get, like I mean, I don't call it a date necessarily, but Jared and I go do things and we hang out and we spend time together, and I think that it's nice to be able to be friends with him and do that. It makes our relationship feel better.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, keep dating your wife is like a very premarital counseling Christian pastor thing. Is like that's the kind of thing they say a lot, that term. So it's a little loaded to me, but yeah, I mean, I agree that you shouldn't stop trying to be romantic and show like kindness and acts of love. Yeah, after getting married, I agree with that
And
for
just
sure.
spending time together, like,
Hmm.
doing nothing even, which is
Yeah,
another thing they say, like, "It's so nice that we can just sit here and eat our salads even though they're mad at each other and
yeah,
not have to talk." Like, we can be in the same room and not have to talk. I have friends that I can just be with, and we don't have to do anything, and I love that too
mm.
because it's just we're so okay with each other and we accept each other as who we are that we don't have to be entertaining.
Yeah. But some people always have to be playing a game, and that's okay for those people too.
Are you
You
talking about
know,
you? You feel
some
like you
people
have to
have
play a game?
best friends they've been best friends with for 20 years and still would like to be always playing a board game or video game when they're with them, or a
Which
sport of some
which is
kind.
totally okay. I'm okay with either way. I don't mind playing the games, but I also don't mind just not doing anything. And I like people that are okay with that. Both of those
I'll
things.
sit and talk, but am hard pressed to sit and not even talk. To just what we're doing for the next hour is we're all sitting on couches.
Yeah.
Because then really what you're doing is you're just looking at your phone.
Yeah.
And if
You
I'm going to be
have
hanging out with
sat
my
and
friends so I
like
don't see them much, I would rather be
turned
doing something.
towards me and had full-blown conversations with me without us doing anything else.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Wait.
like, we don't always do that though. Like, we play games and watch movies together and stuff like that.
I think the beginning of your question cut out. What were you asking? Is that something
No, I was saying you have done that with me.
Yeah.
Like, we've done where we're, like, engaged in a conversation with each other, actively
Mhm.
having a conversation,
Yeah.
or we're playing games and watching movies and stuff like that too.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
I
That's
don't
all
know,
good.
that's it. I like it. I just like seeing those different layers of friendship, I guess is what I'm
Mhm.
trying to say. All right, would
Well,
you watch it
it's
again?
I would watch it again, I think. I thought it was really good. If anything, it might ruin other rom-coms for me. Like I've watched so few. I've seen Crazy Rich Asians, which I think definitely would qualify as a rom-com. And
I love
besides
that one.
that, the last time I watched something that you would technically call a rom-com, it starts
It's
to
been a
get thin on
while.
the ground. So I've seen While You Were Sleeping, which I thought was a horror movie when I started watching it because of the title.
It's kind of a creepy title.
Thank you.
So you would watch it again.
I think so. I thought it was really good. I thought it was a really good movie. I think it's reductive to be like it was good for a rom-com. I thought it was just a good movie.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I would oh, do you think it aged well? That's what I was going to say.
I do think it aged really well. I think I mean, sex positive is probably a little strong. Like it's not like there's no LGBT inclusion or anything like that, but the lack of shaming for having multiple partners. I mean, there's a woman that is acting as a mistress, right, for like whole chunks of it, and that's just kind of played for laughs. I think Billy Crystal is pretty progressively supportive and of and actually acts as a good friend in a way that I was a little surprised, honestly, about how well it aged from those kind of standpoints.
Do you think that it should be remade
No,
with more of those things?
it already has been. There's been like a When Harry Met Sally 2.
What?
Yeah, when you Google it, there's like a couple of these other things. And Billy Crystal was in it.
I'm looking this up.
Do it. When Harry Met Sally II 2 with Billy Crystal and Helen Mirren, April 2011.
That's a Funny or Die thing. Comedy horror 5 minutes.
Oh, it's a short.
Yeah.
Oh, when they're pitching, it's about pitching a sequel.
I'm going to find another rom-com for us at some point. See if it holds up.
I thought it was just a good movie. I thought the filmmaking was good. I thought it was beautifully shot. I thought that there were some cool like filmmaking techniques, like when they did the double phone call on either side of the bed. Thought that was neat. So I thought it was just a good movie. I thought it was well acted and well written.
All right. I love it.
Let us know what thoughts you have on whether or not Billy Crystal has BDE. Call us at
240-MOVIE-76. Call us at 240-MOVIE-76 or text us. Leave us a message. Comment on the YouTube. Comment on the Instagram.
Subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe. Like, 5 stars. Rate and review.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.